Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello. Oh, sorry.
Hello everyone, my name is Afifa and I've got a question for you. What is your favorite story or book and why do you like them? I'll give you some time to answer. I believe that most of you had your childhood filled with stories, whether from movies, books, or fairy tales. Growing up, I was absolutely hooked on watching, reading, and even listening to all kinds of stories. What fascinated me most wasn't just the fun plots, but how most of these tales had perfect flow from the beginning, midway, and until the end. Turns out these stories are actually called narratives, and in written form, they are called narrative text. So, what is narrative text exactly?
A narrative text is a type of text that recounts a series of events in chronological order or in an interconnected manner. The fairy tales from your childhood, works of fiction, legends, myths, and the stories in your favorite novels are all examples of narrative text. Generally, narrative texts are fictional and have four main structures, which are orientation, complication, resolution, and reorientation. The purpose of narrative text is to entertain us, to teach us a lesson, or to share an experience. Now, just like every good recipe needs certain ingredients to taste good, every narrative text needs certain elements to be a good story. The first element of narrative text is setting, that is where and when the story takes place. And then characters, which are the people, animals, or creatures who act out the story. Next up is initiating event or problem, meaning what happens to cause a response that sets a series of other action in motion. Then reaction or feelings, or the characters' feelings and how they react about what happened. Then comes the plan, which is the character's strategy to achieve their goal. Then actions or attempts, which is what the character does to carry out the plan. And that leads to consequence, which is what happens as a result of the plan and attempts. And finally, the resolution, which how the character feels about the consequence and sometimes include the moral lesson. Alright, let's talk about how narrative texts actually work from a grammar perspective. First up is past tense. I mean, you're telling a story about something that already happened, right? Next, action verbs. These are the verbs that show what characters actually do, like ran, jumped, built, discovered, physical action people can see. Action verbs make the story move forward and keep things interesting. Then, saying and thinking verbs. These tell us what characters say or think, like said, told, thought, whispered. They show us the characters' words and what's going on inside their head. Also, time connectors, because narrative is basically events happening one after another. You need words that connect the timeline. Words like then, after that, finally, meanwhile, as soon as, until. They show when things happen in what order. Plus adjectives. These are descriptive words. They tell you what characters or things are like. Beautiful, angry, mysterious. Adjectives make your story vivid and help readers picture what's happening. And finally, nouns. You can't keep repeating character names over and over, right? That gets boring. So you use noun replacement like he, she, the boy, the woman. Nouns keep your writing flowing smoothly without repetition. Alright, so now you know what narrative text is, its structure, its elements, and all the grammar rules. Pretty cool, right? But let me show you how it actually works in a real story. For this, I'm going to use one of the most popular Indonesian folk tales as an example. Bawang merah and bawang putih. And we're going to analyze together where exactly each part of the structure appears. So, pay attention. This is the orientation. Here's where we meet the characters, bawang putih, her stepmother, and the bawang merah. We learn the setting in a small village in Indonesia. We also learn the situation. Bawang Putih's mother passed away. Her father remarried a widow, and eventually her father died too. Now her stepmother and Bawang Merah treat her like a servant, making her do all the household chores. The orientation gives us all the background we need to understand the story. This is the complication. Here's where the problem starts. One day, Bawang Merah's shawl gets swept away by the river current, and Bawang Merah blames Bawang Putih. She orders her to find it and won't let her come home until she does. This is the problem that sets everything in motion. Now we're wondering, what will happen to Bawang Putih? Will she find the shawl? The complication is basically the problem that makes the story interesting. This is the resolution. Bawang Putih finds an old woman's hut by the river. The kind old woman helps her, and Bawang Putih works for a week. As a reward, the old woman gives her a choice of pumpkins, and inside the smaller pumpkin is treasure. But then the stepmother sees it, gets greedy, and sends Bawang Merah to get an even bigger pumpkin. However, instead of treasure, Bawang Merah's pumpkin is full of snakes and poisonous creatures. The problem is solved, and both sisters face the consequences of their actions. This is the turning point where everything changes. This is the reorientation or coda. This is the ending, where we see what happens after the main conflict. Bawang Putih is rewarded for her kindness and hard work. Bawang Merah and her mother suffer because of their greed and laziness. And here's the moral to the story. Kindness, honesty, and hard work are rewarded, while greed and laziness lead to consequences. That's the lesson the story wants us to learn.
Alright, so we covered a lot today, and before we wrap up, I want to know how much you understand about narrative text now. I challenge you to take your favorite story earlier and write down your own narrative text about that story. Use the structure and grammar rules that we talk about today. Share your analysis in the comment if you want. That's pretty much it. Let me know about your thoughts on this topic and how it helped you understand better about narrative text. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!